Hello my loves, it's Sundal from Substance Over Style and welcome to a new video. Okay, so I'm just setting up the space. We've got cinnamon today. I did want sandalwood because sandalwood's really good for like connecting to higher dimensions and channeling information, but don't have it, so cinnamon for today. So today I am discussing a bit of a hot topic, as requested, talking about polyamory, ethical non-monogamy. So just allow me a minute to get into the zone because there's a lot to cover today. So somebody asked a question. Who was it actually? Let me just find the name of the person because I do like to give y'all credit. It was on my video, not the last one, not the Hierogamy one, although I did discuss this topic in that video a little bit. So if you're wanting to kind of research more about my opinion about this, then watch the Hierogamy video. Why you keep dating fuckboys. So on that video, somebody asked me, Karina Capucci, what are your thoughts on polyamory or ethical non-monogamy? So yeah, that kind of prompted a little bit of a stir, caused a little bit of a stir on Facebook, because I, very briefly answered her, said, I've mentioned it in a couple of videos before, it's not hierogamic template. I can talk about it more if enough people want me to. So basically when I shared this video, the fuckboy video, on my Facebook, it was a little bit antagonistic what I said, so I understand why people got triggered, but I just said, to put it bluntly, somebody asked if it can be sacred, because we had this discussion. So they asked the question, I said, it's not a hierogamic template, and then somebody who I was friends with on Facebook, but I'm now no longer because of this issue, said that it can be sacred if done in the right way and all of that stuff. So I'm going to respectfully disagree with that position, and I'll explain why, because I went on a polyamory journey a few years ago, and for me it's not sacred, and I'll go into deeper why that is. But let me just first say, if you are polyamorous or you're in some kind of open relationship, and that works for you and it works for all parties involved and you're all happy and fulfilled, then that's great. Don't let anybody else tell you that you shouldn't be doing that, and I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't be doing that either. I think it's great that there are options, that people have options, and not everybody is forced into this single relationship template of monogamy, because it doesn't work for everybody, and I'm just going to frankly say that it obviously doesn't work for everybody depending on where people are in their journey. So I do think that if you're interested in exploring it, then explore it. Like, don't let anybody tell you that you shouldn't explore it. Do your research, check in with yourself all the time, and happy exploring. Like, I did it, so I'm not going to tell other people that they shouldn't. Just be prepared that you may be in to learn some hard lessons, and there are consequences to actions. Whatever you do, there are always consequences, okay? And I learned some very difficult lessons, so I'm here to share some of those with you, and why I now have to take the position that I've taken. Okay, so there's so many things that I want to say, so I just want to try and make sure that I cover everything. Yeah, so when I was researching it, I found some really, really beautiful, really positive and what looked like very healthy examples of, open style relationships and different, and let me just say that, polyamory is only one style of open relating. There are so many different, and even polyamory, like the umbrella of polyamory is just huge. There's so many different types of, oh, I'm getting a phone call. Who's calling me? Hello?
Attention, this is an emergency call from National.
That sounds like some spam. So yeah, that interrupted my flow. What did I want to say? When I was researching it, I saw some really, really beautiful examples of ethical non-monogamy, and yeah, and that made me think maybe this is a higher style of relating. Maybe this is a highest style of relating. That was obviously before I discovered, you know, the Hierogamy path, which I now believe to be the highest form of relating, and I'm going to talk later about why that is. So the problem that I have with ethical non-monogamy and polyamory is when people try and position it as some like super evolved style of relating. I think that it can be a more evolved style of relating depending where you're at. And this is why I said that it wasn't sacred. And when I shared the video, I said, you know, when I shared my fuckboys video on Facebook, I just said, some people have asked me, you know, to talk about whether I consider ethical non-monogamy to be sacred. And, you know, I'll talk about it more in another video, but just to put it very bluntly and very succinctly, it's about as sacred as a demon. And that triggered somebody. It triggered the person who had commented on the video talking about how it can be sacred if done consciously, blah, blah, blah. And he DM'd me going, my sexuality is not demonic, da, da, da. Now, it all depends on how you define a demon. Like the word demon, etymologically, daemon means genius. That's what that word means. So, you know, when you have your, you know, like with shadow work, I've talked about shadow work in previous videos. When you actually get to know your demons, your inner demons, you reclaim lost parts of yourself that have been hidden and suppressed in the shadows of your subconscious. That makes you more powerful. Okay, so polyamory or ethical non-monogamy can be a very powerful process of shadow integration. So in that way, it can be part of your spiritual journey in the same way as talking to a demon. Do you know what I mean? Like, I talk to demons all the time, okay? I get to know them. I find out what their motivation is. It's important to be able to talk to them when you're doing soul retrieval. So when I do quantum field work with clients, we find out when they have entity attachments, we go and open up those timelines, and we sometimes even talk to the entity and find out where it's, you have to, in order to find out the wound that it's attached to, because that wound is a lost part of your psyche. It's like a younger aspect of yourself that's become separated from your divine nature, from God, and so needs to feed, and it feeds on your wounds and your negativity. But when you basically bring God in, the unconditional love of God, and reconnect it to source, you reclaim that lost part of yourself, and then the demonic aspect or the lower aspect or the parasitic aspect dissolves. Okay, so that's what I meant by that. But he got very triggered. Okay, and now, let me say again why I don't believe it to be sacred for me, okay? Because the word sacred has an actual definition, okay? Sacred, and this also became a bit of a problem because loads of people in the sacred sexuality group on Facebook were talking about sacred can be anything, it can mean anything to anyone. And I disagree. Well, I agree and I don't. The word sacred basically means anything that brings you closer to God. Anything that takes you away from God is profane. That's what that word means, okay? And that also triggered people. I had somebody that was very triggered and very rude at commenting, saying, oh, who do you think you are? Do you think that you're God? Who do you think you are telling somebody what, you know, should be sacred to them? You don't get to decide what's sacred to another person. I don't get to decide. I agree that I don't get to decide what brings someone closer to God, because we're all unique, okay? And we've all gone on our own journeys, and depending on where, you know, where your alignment is away from the central channel of truth, what brings you closer to God will be different for each person. For me, polyamory, ethical non-monogamy will not bring me closer to God, because I already went through that process. So it would be going backwards. It would be taking me away from my creator. It would be profane. But where I was at that time, it brought me closer, because, you know, and this is where this other person got triggered, because he said that, you know, it was sacred for him and his wife, because before they married really young, and this is where I understand where people are coming from, and I do think that it is a necessary part of the spiritual journey for some people, and that's why I say you should do it if it works for you. For him, they married very young and they were pushed into monogamy, as most people tend to be. And because of that, what's the word, that suffocating, template of not being able to really express themselves freely and express their sexuality freely, there was infidelity and deception, okay? Now, because of that, what is now working for them is a more open style of relating, where there is conscious communication and openness and honesty. So that is definitely a more evolved version of a more evolved relational style than before. So if you're in like a standard, relationship, like let's be real, okay? The way that humans are programmed in this society is so far from divine, it's not even funny. Like the way that, if you're watching, most Hollywood programs, if you're watching most Hollywood movies, soap operas, trashy music, and I don't even look at most TV shows anymore, or music videos or films, except for the purpose of education. Like I'll watch certain things if I know that they've got certain allegories or certain symbolism. But I'll look at it from that perspective. I won't just sit there and numb out, because it's mind control, okay? It's programming, it's brainwashing, and it's brainwashing people into hypersexuality, into, just having casual sex with no emotional intimacy present, with no honoring, with no love, with no respect for the other. Just do whatever you want, just be liberated, and again, it's the same with the feminist programming, that to be sexually liberated you can just fuck around because that's what men do and they're liberated, and like they're not. Let's just put that out there, okay? The toxic masculine is not liberated at all. And emulating the toxic masculine is not the type of feminine liberation that I want to see in the world. Okay, so this is what we're being fed. So when that's what you're being fed, polyamory looks super sacred. It looks super like a highly evolved way of relating, especially when before that, and I understand why all that hypersexuality happened, because the religious programming around monogamy is so... can be so suffocating, okay? And a lot of people will look at the Hierogamos path and they will see religious programming, and I totally understand why, because the religious programming didn't manage to be able to get people to choose this path willingly, okay? There was no sovereignty around being able to explore your own sexuality on your own terms and see, we're always trying to, seek expansion and seek knowledge and find out what love is and what God is by experiencing what love isn't and what God isn't. Okay? So, yeah. Okay, let me just come back to what point was I making? Yeah, so I understand why people think it's sacred coming from that place. It definitely is a higher form of relating. However, I do think that there are a lot of problematic teachings in polyamory and the open relating communities. And I know this from first-hand experience, and also living in polyamorous communities. Like I lived in Ubud for like almost a year, like 7 to 8 months. So, polyamory is really common there, and everybody is going around fucking everybody else, quite frankly. That's what I saw. Just like, you'd be at ecstatic dance and somebody's girlfriend is rolling around with somebody else's boyfriend, and there's just a lot of leaky sexual energy everywhere. And for me, I was coming out of my polyamorous programming at that time, so it was really interesting to see it from the outside. and I'm so glad that I didn't get involved in it when I was into it. Like, I was, at that time I was living in a different part of Bali, where it wasn't so popular, which is like the south, where people are kind of more in the unconscious way of doing things, like just getting drunk, hooking up, all of that stuff. So I find that a lot of the teachings can be quite problematic. So the whole idea that they teach a lot in polyamorous communities and open relationship styles is like, let's get rid of this idea that, you know, you're more special than anybody else, because monogamy teaches you this idea that you are, you know, more special than other people, and, you know, that you should have ownership over somebody else's sexuality, instead of being unconditionally loving. You should unconditionally love everyone, and you should be happy for your partner if they are enjoying, you know, sex, or, you know, eros or flirtation or dating or whatever, some kind of intimacy with another person, because they are you and you are them and we are all one. Okay? Let me put some lip gloss on, actually. I forgot to put my lip gloss on. I got this really nice, like, lip gloss, which has got, like, this flat, it's like a pinky gold duochrome. It's from e.l.f. and I haven't even really used it yet. Nice. Okay. Yeah, so I just find this to be a completely disembodied way of relating. It kind of completely ignores the human experience. We are special, okay? All of us are special. Now, I get that we're not more special than another person, but, you know, love is special and sex is special. And when somebody chooses to be with you to the exclusion of all others, that allows the two people to go really, really deep together in an alchemical container to really heal and balance your inner polarities, your masculine and feminine, and, you know, enjoy that sacred intimacy that is the expression of love. That's what it is. That's why it's called making love, right? It's an expression of love, so that they can experience and know God, okay? That is what sex is, okay? It's the creation principle. When you find somebody with which you are compatible with and with which you could actually co-create something, which is the Hierogamy path, it is about coming together, masculine and feminine, to create something. That is the creation code. That is how life is birthed on this planet. Man, woman, divine child, okay? Divine masculine, divine feminine, divine child. So the Hierogamy path is not just about men and women coming together, or masculine and feminine coming together to have sex. It's about coming together to birth something into the world, which is a divine mission. It can be a family, or it can be something bigger. Now, when you spread that sacred sexual energy around amongst multiple people, your focus and your ability to bring something through that container becomes diffused, okay? Maybe some might argue, oh, you can bring more things through because you're with more people. It's just like, well, I mean, you can, but there's only so many hours in the day. Like, your focus is going to be spread out amongst multiple people. And people who are in open styles of relationship, that's one of the first things that they'll say, that there's not enough time sometimes to love all the people that they want to love. Now, I understand the idea of, like, not putting all the pressure on one person to be all things to you, because, you know, our kind of monogamous style of relating can often put an incredible amount of pressure on our primary partners or our main sexual partner to be, you know, everything to us. But that's only a Western model of, you know, relating, which is very atomized, where, you know, children move out of the family home at like 18 years old, they find a partner, they get married, and then they raise their families on their own. Asian cultures and, you know, other types of indigenous cultures or tribal cultures are not like that. We don't put that emphasis on that one person to be everything, because we have support systems, okay? But that person is our sexual partner, okay? So we still have emotional intimacy with other people, but it's not romantic or sexual in nature. It's still very loving, though. I have, very, very loving relationships with people who are not my partner, who are not my boyfriend, but they're not romantic and they're not sexual, because that's for him. And likewise, he also has beautiful friendships, beautiful relationships with other people, and I want him to have that, but not romantic and not sexual, because that's what we have together. So another thing that really, and this is the main thing that really, really bothers me about polyamory and what I saw firsthand when I was living in these communities and I was coming out of it myself, is that it teaches you that your jealousy is insecurity, and that you have to work on your wounds and, try and find out the source of your insecurity and transcend it so that you can be a more whole and evolved person. It's all so anti-human and so anti-life, and trying to paint humans as these like immortal, highly evolved, enlightened spiritual beings, and completely disregards human experience, okay? Your human emotional body is your superpower, okay? It's your moral compass. You were made in the image and likeness of God, okay? God has emotions as well. God does not like it when we harm each other. God does not like it when we cause suffering and pain to innocent people and children and animals in the world, okay? God is emotional, has emotions. This is one of the core things that I learned from my mentor, Emily, and it just felt so right to me. I just could not believe that God was just blissed out all the time and was totally neutral in areas of like evil and things like that, that God is okay with evil because God is above duality and God looks at everything from this higher God. Yes, God loves those who do evil, but he does not, or she does not, love evil acts being perpetrated, okay? And now I'm not saying polyamory is evil, but it does cause a lot of suffering and a lot of pain, seeing the person that you genuinely love enjoying that kind of intimacy that you share together, that godly intimacy, that sacred intimacy with another person. It does, okay? And polyamorous people will testify to this, that it hurts because you're human, and that there's a reason why it hurts, because that's your beloved and that's something, that's your sexual energy. And a lot of polyamorous people don't seem to realize, they say, oh, you don't own your partner's sexuality, you don't have sovereignty over your partner, you don't own your partner, you don't control your partner. That's true, but you do own your own sexuality. And when you're sharing sexual energy with someone, that creates an emotional bond, okay? There are cords that get formed, okay? I help my clients remove these cords when relationships end, because even once a relationship is over, there is still cords of attachment that connect you to that person. There's almost, when you've been in a very deep relationship with somebody where there's a lot of feelings involved, it forms an entire energetic matrix. So you literally become one. You become one energy body. That is what the Hierogamos is. It's the two becoming one. So when that person shares sexual energy with another person, then the matrix actually expands, and your sexual energy, which is your vitality, it's your life force, ends up getting shared with that person as well. Now, if that person is not God-sourced, if they're not sourcing their energy directly from the creator and they're looking for other people to siphon energy from through the sex act, which a lot of people do, when they're not God-sourced, when they're not on a hierogamic journey, they think this is what sex is. It's like, and especially unconscious sex, it's people trying to pull God-source energy through other people. This is where satanic ritual abuse comes from, sadly, because a lot of these people who are hosting demonic entities, the demonic entities are separated from the creator, so they're starving for sustenance, for that eternal living light of God's source, so they can only get it through the most innocent beings, which are usually children. That's why they do very dark practices where they, will rape and mutilate and torture children and feed on their sexual life force energy. It's very demonic, it's very fucked up, it's very evil. God hates it, I hate it. Anybody who is God sourced and who is you know, walking in the path of truth and light and divine justice will hate that, okay? Don't believe the New Age lie that we should be unconditionally loving and neutral towards things like that. So if your beloved is sharing sexual energy with somebody who isn't God-sourced, or is possibly even hosting entities, they will be siphoning your sexual energy as well, okay? Now, that's parasitic. I don't agree with parasitism, okay? So that's why I think it's not sacred, because it's not fair for you to be sourcing all your energy from God and then feeding these other people that want to feed on you and your beloved's sexual energy and the matrix that you have formed together through your love. Now, polysexual is obviously a different style of relating, where you've got the two people in love and then they just have sexual relations with other people where love is not involved. So they're just using other people as masturbation aids, because they're not genuinely making love. They're not using the sacred sex act as a tool for accessing God, because God, that's what orgasm is. Orgasm is, you know, when God source energy pours in through your crown chakra, it's the frequency of love, okay? That's what God is. So that's what the sex act is. So another thing that he said was, when he was talking about, when he was messaging me and getting very triggered, was just like, what about, you know, a tantric masseuse, you know, you know, if I visit a tantric masseuse, how is that not sacred? I get very, very fucked off with the whole misappropriation of the ancient Indian science of the human light body, which is the tantric yogic sciences, and the association, that the modern day association of that with sex, okay? When people hear the word tantra, they think new age sexy time. That's what that word has now become synonymous with. That's not what tantra is. I'm actually going to quote somebody who left an amazing comment on the status that I made, because she says it way better than I could. Yeah, by the way, if you want to see the post, you just add me on Facebook. I'm Ishtar Moon, or you can just follow my public post, because I think my friend list is full, but you'll be able to see the post. So it started with, just had to block another one who I also always thought was cool and was going to have on my channel as a guest. This is the friend that was messaging me. Yeah, I always thought he was cool. Like, I actually have no issues with him as a person, but you know, he was really rude to me, and you know, I don't want to digress too much, but yeah, because he was literally bombarded. Sorry, my camera stopped recording. Yeah, so I said, just had to block another one who I also always thought was cool and was going to have on my channel as a guest, because he was literally bombarding me with messages trying to change my opinion on polyamory after yesterday's fuckboy video. Basically saying that women who require loyalty are Disney princess programmed. And just because he visits a tantric masseuse, and I put in brackets, new age sex worker, that makes his relationship container sacred. There are so many false light deceptions on this plane. Just because something pulls on your energy and you want to dive into your shadows to retrieve it, cool, do that. But that doesn't make it sacred. The New Age was one of the most effective ways to divert awakening souls into praying to the universe and all sorts of other demonic entities, and associating the ancient Indian science of the human light body, Tantra, with sex was just another New Age deception and cultural misappropriation to boot. If your wife isn't enough to keep you sexually interested and you both make a consensual agreement to play outside of the container, cool, do you. I have no problem with that. But what I do have an issue with is trying to convert, tarnish, and gaslight vulnerable and awakening souls, particularly those holding the Sophianic essence, i.e. the feminine essence, into accepting less than their God-given worth, or tell them they're princess programmed. Because that's when I blocked him, because he said that I was Disney princess programmed. Definitely don't do this after asking my opinion on the matter, then try to change it. I'm not here to argue about this. I already tried the whole poly thing years ago and it blew up in my face. So yeah, been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt, and I speak from experience. If any other trash want to take themselves out, the unfriend button is there. Yeah, I can be very fierce when people cross me, as y'all know. Okay, so Yiska Kamel, I hope I haven't butchered your name right there, but I'm friends with her on Facebook. She said this so perfectly. The Western world has in fact unfairly distorted the word Tantra and turned it from its original meaning. These are the research definition of Tantra anybody can access online. Etymologically, the Sanskrit word Tantra means to weave in English. Practically, Tantra means a set of religious sacred texts and yogic practices weaved together in order to support the spiritual evolution of man. By the way, my Kriya Yoga course is Tantra. So if you want to know more about true Tantra, then join my course, Reclaim Your Crown. I'll put the link in the description box below. Practically, Tantra means a set of... Oh, sorry, I said that. It has nothing to do with sex. It contains magical and esoteric practices that include hierogamic white sex magic between two souls that saintedly love one another, but it doesn't mean only sexual practices. The Western world loves to distort the words that designate pure, divine, Indian sacred practices and use them for their impure and demonic practices. I wonder why. Nowadays, when people in the West hear the word Tantra, they immediately think about sex. While in its immaculate Sanskrit origin, it has nothing to do with sex at all, even though it can include sacred sex between two holy souls in divine union, i.e. Hierogamos. Amongst its various other sacred rituals, such as a specific way of eating, showering, etc., and the sexual ritual, a specific way of doing sex, doesn't even take the first place amongst the totality of tantric rituals, although it has its noble place as Hierogamos, sacred marriage between two loving souls. Saintly sex between two divine partners can be included into tantric practices. It is thus called tantric sex, with all the tantric methods of doing it. But that doesn't mean Tantra is centered only around sex. That idea of Tantra being only about sex is a distortion and a lie. She nailed it. Boom, boom, boom. Tsh. Thank you. Mic drop. So yes, let me explain very briefly why the hierogamic template is monogamous between two people, a masculine and a feminine. It doesn't have to be a man and woman, but you know, often it is. But you know, if you're LGBT, and I do understand that LGBT people might lean more towards polyamory, just because, you know, if you're bisexual, for example, you might not be able to decide between having a male partner and a female partner, and I get that. But that's not a hierogamic template, and that's fine. I don't think that I don't have a moral issue with that, as long as everybody's happy with the container. But it's not hierogamic, because in our bodies, in the human light body, we have a feminine channel, our Ida channel on the left side, and a masculine channel, our Pingala, on the right side, okay? We do not have a masculine and two Idas. We do not have an Ida and two Pingalas. We do not have an Ida and Pingala and then another Ida and a Pingala floating around somewhere in the background, okay? We just have Ida and Pingala, and when those two are in balance, then Mahaprana, Kundalini can flow, activating the third eye, the eye of providence, the eye of God. The crown chakra opens up the crown, connects you to the higher realms, okay? That is what your Kundalini connects you to God. Orgasm connects you to God. It's the balancing of your masculine and feminine channels while you're in, you know, having sex with your partner, while you're making love with your partner. So this whole, I don't know, like, I've kind of gone, you know, dipped my toes into neo-tantric communities and looked at how they define tantric sex. And to me, it just seems like sex. Like, that's just like how you have sex when you're in love with someone, when you're actually like doing it properly. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I haven't dove too deep into like the actual, you know, true text. So maybe there are other practices there that I haven't researched, but like all that eye gazing and the breathing and all of that stuff, you do that naturally anyway when you're in love with someone and you're making love. I do anyway. I don't know about y'all. But yes, so the issue, like another issue that I have seen with polyamorous couples is, or polyamorous units, is I see a lot of people with boundary issues. So, you know, a lot of vulnerable and awakening souls will get sucked into this because they think that it's the way. They've bought the false lie that men cannot be faithful. For me, this was why I bought into it. You know, I was dating this guy, and he kind of presented this idea as this highly evolved thing, and it was just, you know, I wasn't looking for a serious relationship at that time. This was when I was traveling. I was modeling in Bangkok and traveling all over Thailand, and I just was focusing on my career. I wasn't really looking for anything serious, but I did want to have, you know, I didn't want to just have like casual hookups. I wanted to have relationships that were maybe shorter, you know, loverships, but were, you know, there was still, you know, admiration, emotional connection, respect, love even. But I just wasn't looking to like get married or have like a long-term thing. So anyway, met this guy. He was super into it, and he was just coming out of a breakup, and he was really wanting to just have open style relationships. So whatever, I only spent like a few days with him, like while he was on holiday in Bali. And, you know, we had a really beautiful time together. And so then I really started questioning it and going, maybe this is a more evolved way of doing things, because I had been in a relationship, the longest relationship that I had been in before that was like 4 years. I've spoken about it before. There was a lot of cheating and a lot of lying. Mainly on his part. It was mostly his part. The only cheating that I did was like revenge type of cheating, just because I was trying to bargain and trying to hold on to the relationship instead of just keeping my dignity intact, because I didn't believe that I could do better. I didn't believe that but there was even better out there. I just thought that this was normal. This was how men were, that they were just naturally all porn addicts, and that they were all just going to do something at some point. So I was just like, fine, okay, if he can do it, then I'm gonna fucking do it as well. And then it just totally devolved into this game of one-upmanship, with both of us just trying to hurt each other the most, and it was awful. So, you know, I was going through this kind of process of discovery and just wondering, like, can men be faithful? Like, can they be loyal to one woman? And I just, at that time, just believed that naturally we couldn't. And I did a lot of research, you know, watched all the interviews, watched interviews with the guy, the couple that wrote Sex at Dawn and all of this stuff. And I was just like, maybe we're just not naturally meant to be monogamous. Maybe we're not. So I was just like, fine, if they can do it, then I can do it too. You know, I can hook up with different people. You know, women don't find it super easy to just stay with one person either, and bought into all of that shit. And what I found was that it was just a way of avoiding intimacy. Like, I could do it as long as I was talking to some friends at dinner the other night. They were just like, yeah, when you were into that, I was just like, how do you do it? Like, maybe I'm just not evolved enough, but I just can't do it. And I was just like, babe, the only reason why I was able to do it was because I wasn't that into any of the people that I was dating. Like, if I had been in love with any of the people that I was open relating with, I would not have been able to do it. It was, as long as my heart was kept here with a cage around it and very protected, then it was fine. So it's just like, yeah, I can have a little bit of this person, can have a little bit of that person. And what would always end up happening every time I tried to have this kind of style of relating was I would meet somebody who was not down with that, and who was like, no, I want monogamy. I really like you. If you want to be with me, then you are with only me. And I would always choose that person, because ultimately, I want to be with one person and go really deep with that person to the exclusion of all others. So some people might argue, maybe I'm just not naturally, you know, polyamorous. Maybe I'm just naturally monogamous. And yeah, maybe, you know, I'm willing to accept that maybe it is a sexual orientation that some people can't seem to be monogamous. I mean, definitely some people by observation can't seem to do it. I believe that might be because they've separated from God, so they need to try and find multiple people to kind of fill up their cup, because they don't know how to self-source. But, you know, I'm open to being wrong about that, but that's just, I'm just one person, okay, and this is just what I've learned. I see a lot of people being gaslit into getting into these kinds of relationships and thinking that because they feel jealous and because they don't like it, they don't like what their partner is doing, and they don't like how their partner is making them feel, there's something wrong with them. And, you know, I can hear somebody in the background going, well, nobody can make you feel anything. It's just like, people we have effects on each other, okay? Yeah, you're always responsible for how you feel, but I just think that that's extremely narcissistic. And I have seen those types of relationships where there'll be one narcissistic partner and one codependent partner. And the narcissistic partner is the one that wants to do whatever he wants, and the codependent one is just going along with it. And I see her giving herself up to all and sundry just so that she can keep up with his sexual needs to be with other women, even though she doesn't really want to. She doesn't want to. She just wants to be. I can see it in her eyes, okay? There was one particular couple that we would see around a lot. And I could just see when she was having intimacy with another man who wasn't her beloved, her eyes were just completely glazed over. It was like she was totally disembodied. And I think she was disembodied because she was just trying to transcend, you know, all of these negative feelings that she was experiencing in her body, thinking that there was something wrong with her. And you know, I'm so glad and so grateful that I got into a relationship with somebody who was very, very against open relating and polyamory. And he really helped set me straight on a lot of these things. And unfortunately, the relationship ended because he was really uncomfortable with the fact that, you know, when we had got together, I was questioning it and I wasn't really sure about what I thought about monogamy. And that made him feel very, very unsafe in the relationship. And this was now the third man who I had hurt in this way. And I wasn't aware that I was doing it. Obviously, I wasn't doing it consciously, but I was making these men feel very, very unsafe. So the thing that, if you believe that men can't be loyal to one woman, it's not true. Okay, it's really not true. Men desire safety and loyalty just as much as women do. And there are many men who know, just because men get activated by seeing women because we are goddesses doesn't mean that they can't be sexually disciplined. We also get activated. Like, come on, when you see a hot, sexy guy, yeah, you notice it. Like, you might not think about, you know, having sex with him in the way that men do because they have testosterone. But with, you know, the way that we get activated is different, right? Okay, we like attention and things like that. So women also struggle with loyalty as well, but we can be disciplined with it, especially if we're getting our needs met. Now, I do think that there is something that monogamous people can learn from polyamorous people, and that is to have open communication about boundaries and expectations and things like that, because monogamy is defined differently to different people, and how one person defines monogamy may be completely different from another person. So this person that I was with, who really set me straight about monogamy and polyamory, he had a very, very different version of what monogamy means to what I did. And his definition was far too tight for me, and I just found it suffocating and a little bit controlling. Now, I'm lucky that the partner that I have now is much more, he just gives me a lot more freedom, and I feel so free in that I don't even want to do half the things that I was doing that would upset the previous partner. The previous partner was very uncomfortable with the fact that I had sexy pictures on my Instagram, even though he knew that I was a model when we got together. Suddenly he became uncomfortable with me being a model when we got together. He was uncomfortable with the amount of DMs I would get from followers, and the fact that I would talk to those followers, would always be looking over my shoulder to see who I was talking to and what was being talked about. Was uncomfortable with, you know, certain male friends of mine, or the fact that I even had male friends. So, you know, he had a lot of these insecurities and things like that, which is fine. A lot of it was to do with his family of origin trauma, but it was uncomfortable for me. So, you know, you have to find the person that, you know, where your boundaries and what is okay for you is okay for that person as well. Okay, so I have certain standards, I have certain boundaries about what I'm comfortable in my relationship, and my partner really respects that. Like, he likes the fact that I express them, and the reason why I'm able to express them is because I learned from this previous partner that it doesn't matter. Like, you know, I would try and, I wouldn't say, I wasn't gaslighting him, but, you know, he might perceive it that way, that when he would tell me, oh, I don't want you to have, you know, this, that, and the other, I don't want you to talk to exes, I don't want you to have exes on your Facebook, or I don't want you having sexy photos on your Instagram. I'm just like, you can't tell me what to do, that's controlling, da 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 da. And he was just like, well, I don't care if it's controlling or not. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that is like that or does those things. And that's fair. Like, it might be controlling if you expect that person to do it, but if you just say, no, I'm looking for this kind of relationship, are you a fit or not? Like, it's when you hold your relationships too tightly, even when they don't quite fit. We were not a fit. We came together because we had to heal stuff together. And I'm really, like, now that I've healed so much from that, I'm able to see the lesson in that, especially now that I'm in a new relationship. The things that I learned from him, even though the relationship was so tumultuous and caused a lot of pain, especially when it ended, are invaluable, because, you know, I'm so much more embodied and honoring of my feelings and what feels good to me and what doesn't than I was before I met him. I was much more like went along with things, whereas now I'm like, this doesn't feel good to me, I don't like this. If that's a thing, if that's something that you have to do, if you feel like you have to, you know, be like this with people or whatever, then, you know, I'm not down for that. And that made me extremely attractive to my boyfriend now. So, you know, it's about honoring yourself, and like, if you can really, really learn to honor your feelings and to honor what feels good to you and how you want to feel in a relationship, and not feel like you have to compromise on that. Like, I'm not saying you should never ever compromise, because relationships can involve a little bit of compromise, but on the things that really are important to you, where you really, really feel like you need certain things to feel safe, especially in the dating process, because for me, a lot of these not rules, but a lot of these standards were established in the dating process with my boyfriend now. And because of that, we have a very healthy relationship where we both feel free, but we also both feel safe. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. Like, you want to feel free, but you want to feel loved. You want to feel like not suffocated, but you also want to feel safe. So yeah. I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question. If you want to, if there were any other areas that you wanted me to clarify, you wanted me to talk about it a bit more, you can, you know, ask me a question in the comment box below. As always, I'm available for sessions. You can just DM me. Also, Reclaim Your Crown is now open. Thanks so much, guys, for being so patient. It took so much longer than I thought it was going to kind of build the sales page and all of that. I'm sorry, like, I can be a bit off like a tech doofus sometimes. Like, I can't always figure out how to do things when it's like a new platform or a new piece of software that I'm learning, but now it's up and running. So yeah, if you want to join and learn true tantric practices that will help you activate your kundalini, that will help you balance your masculine and feminine energies, that, you know, there's a beautiful Hierogamy activation in the, you know, in the thymus, in the higher heart chakra that I've done. In that, it will help connect you to Mother, Father, God. It will help you heal your traumas. It's got so many wonderful benefits. So yeah, just click the link in the sign up link in the description box below. I will love you and leave you, soul fam, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. One love.